The forest was dark, oppressively dark. The moon, a sliver in the night sky, did little to pierce the dense canopy above. I was alone, lost. My flashlight, which had been a beacon of hope just moments ago, now flickered weakly, its battery on the verge of death. Each step I took was met with the crunching of leaves underfoot. The sound, once comforting, now seemed amplified in the eerie silence. A shiver ran down my spine. The air grew colder, heavy with the feeling of unseen eyes. I had been so confident just a few hours ago. A seasoned hiker, I scoffed at the trail closed at night sign. How hard could it be to follow a simple trail? I'd be back to my car long before nightfall. I was wrong. Now, with the darkness pressing in around me, I cursed my arrogance. The trail, clearly marked during the day, was now nothing more than a suggestion in the undergrowth. Panic welled up inside me. I had to get out of this forest. A twig snapped in the distance. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Was it an animal or something else? Then I heard it. A faint whisper carried on the wind. It was low, almost inaudible, but definitely there. I strained to make out the words, but they were lost in the rustling leaves. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the sound. It was probably just the wind, I told myself. Forests were full of strange noises. But the sound had shaken me. It was as if the forest itself had come alive, whispering secrets and warnings that only I could hear. The air was thick with tension, and every fiber of my being was on edge. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, each beat echoing in the silence that followed the mysterious noise. My senses were on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every subtle movement in the underbrush seemed amplified. The forest was a symphony of sounds, each one more unsettling than the last. The leaves rustled as if they were whispering to each other, sharing secrets about the intruder in their midst. I felt like an unwelcome guest in a place that was both beautiful and terrifying. Every snapping twig, every crackle underfoot sent jolts of fear through me. It was as if the forest was alive, watching my every move, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The sound of a twig snapping was like a gunshot in the stillness, making me jump and look around frantically. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted, that something or someone was out there, lurking in the shadows. The shadows from the trees seemed to twist and contort, taking on shapes that my mind turned into menacing figures. The play of light and dark created illusions that made my heart race. Every shadow seemed to move with a life of its own, dancing and shifting in ways that defied logic. It was as if the forest was playing tricks on me, testing my resolve and my sanity. Taking on menacing shapes in my mind, the shadows became monsters, their forms growing more sinister with each passing moment. My imagination ran wild, conjuring up images of creatures that lurked just out of sight, waiting to pounce. The trees, once a source of beauty and tranquility, had become twisted and grotesque, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I imagined eyes peering at me from the darkness, glowing with an unnatural light. It felt like the forest was alive with unseen watchers, their gaze piercing through the shadows. The feeling of being observed was overwhelming, making my skin crawl and my breath come in short, panicked gasps. I couldn't shake the sensation that I was not alone, that something was out there, watching and waiting. I picked up my pace, desperate to break free of the oppressive atmosphere. My footsteps were loud in the stillness, each one echoing like a drumbeat in the quiet forest. I ran, not caring where I was going, only wanting to escape the suffocating feeling of being watched. The faster I ran, the more the forest seemed to close in around me, its dark embrace tightening with every step. But with every step, the forest seemed to close in around me. The trees grew denser, their branches intertwining to form a nearly impenetrable barrier. The path ahead was narrow and winding, leading me deeper into the heart of the forest. It was as if the forest itself was conspiring to trap me, to keep me from finding my way out. The sense of claustrophobia was overwhelming, making it hard to breathe. The feeling that I was being watched intensified. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, seemed to confirm my worst fears. I could almost feel the eyes on me, their gaze heavy and unrelenting. It was a primal fear, one that reached deep into my soul and refused to let go. I was no longer just a person in a forest. I was prey. And the forest was my predator. I was no longer alone in the dark. The forest had come alive with unseen presences, their whispers and movements surrounding me. I could feel them closing in, their intentions unknown but undoubtedly sinister. The darkness was no longer just an absence of light, it was a living, breathing entity that sought to consume me. I had to get out, but the way was unclear, and the forest seemed determined to keep me within its grasp. Section 5, a chorus of whispers. Then I heard it again, the whisper. But this time it was closer, clearer, and it wasn't alone. Multiple voices, soft and sibilant, seemed to emanate from the trees themselves. They spoke in hushed tones, their words indecipherable but undeniably menacing. Fear coiled in my stomach, cold and tight. My rational mind told me it was just the wind playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew better. This was something else. Something ancient and evil. I stumbled on, my breath catching in my throat. I tried to cling to logic, to reason. Maybe it was a group of animals, their nocturnal sounds distorted by the darkness. Maybe it was nothing at all, but the whispers followed me, growing louder with each passing moment. They seemed to circle me, taunting me, hurting me deeper into the heart of the darkness. My flashlight flickered again, threatening to plunge me into total darkness. Despair threatened to overwhelm me. And then I saw it. Through the trees, a faint glow emanated from the depths of the forest. It pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. Curiosity warred with fear. Was this the source of the whispers? Was it a way out, or was it leading me further into danger? I hesitated, torn between running towards it and fleeing in the opposite direction. But the whispers seemed to beckon me, urging me forward. Taking a deep breath, I stumbled towards the light, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I drew closer, the glow intensified, revealing its source. The forest was eerily silent, the usual sounds of nocturnal creatures absent, as if they too were afraid of what lay ahead. My heart pounded in my chest, each step forward feeling heavier than the last. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. In the center of a small clearing stood a towering oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. The tree seemed ancient, as if it had witnessed countless secrets over the centuries. Its bark was rough and dark, almost black, contrasting sharply with the glowing light that emanated from its base. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a beacon in the darkness that drew me in despite my fear, and wrapped around its trunk, pulsating with that unearthly light, was a single human hand. The light seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically, casting eerie shadows that danced on the forest floor. The hand was unnaturally still, as if frozen in time, and the glow it emitted was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was both beautiful and horrifying, a paradox that left me rooted to the spot. It was pale and slender, its fingers delicate. The skin was almost translucent, with veins visible beneath the surface, giving it an ethereal quality. The hand looked fragile, as if it could shatter with the slightest touch. Yet it held an inexplicable power that commanded attention. I couldn't tear my eyes away, drawn to the strange beauty of the scene, but it was the ring on its index finger that stole my breath away. The ring seemed to glow with a light of its own, distinct from the hand's eerie luminescence. It was intricately designed, with patterns that seemed to shift and change as I looked at them. The sight of it triggered a flood of memories, and a chill ran down my spine. It was an ornate silver ring, identical to one my grandmother had owned. The craftsmanship was unmistakable, with the same delicate filigree and tiny gemstones set into the band. I remembered how she used to wear it every day, a cherished heirloom passed down through generations. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, and I felt a wave of nausea. A ring that had been stolen from her grave years ago. The memory of that day came rushing back, the shock and grief of discovering the desecration of her final resting place. We had searched for the ring, but it had vanished without a trace. And now here it was, in the middle of this dark, foreboding forest, wrapped around a ghostly hand. The implications were terrifying, and I felt a deep sense of unease. What dark forces were at play here? And what did they want with me? I stood there, paralyzed with terror, my heart pounding in my chest like a drumbeat echoing through the stillness of the night. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, a palpable sense of dread that seemed to seep into my very bones. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig, sent shivers down my spine. I could feel the weight of the forest pressing in on me, as if it were a living entity, aware of my presence and intent on keeping me there. My gaze locked on that ghostly hand, its ethereal glow casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. It was as if time itself had stopped, and I was caught in a moment that stretched on forever. The hand seemed to beckon me, drawing me closer with an irresistible pull. I wanted to run, to escape the clutches of whatever malevolent force had conjured this apparition, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The whispers had ceased, replaced by a silence so profound it was deafening. It was the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums, making you acutely aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat. The forest, once alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, now seemed to be holding its breath, as if waiting for something to happen. The stillness was unnerving, a stark contrast to the chaos that had preceded it. The forest held its breath, watching me, waiting. The tall trees loomed overhead, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Shadows danced in the periphery of my vision, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched by unseen eyes. The mist that clung to the ground swirled around my ankles, adding to the surreal atmosphere. It was as if the forest itself was alive, a sentient being that had taken an interest in me. For what, I didn't know, but the sense of foreboding was overwhelming. I felt like a trespasser in a realm that was not meant for the living. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to get as far away from this place as possible, but I couldn't move. It was as if the forest had ensnared me in its grasp, holding me captive with its ancient, unyielding power. But I could feel a presence there, ancient and powerful. It was a force that had existed long before humans had set foot in this world, a primordial entity that commanded respect and fear. The air was thick with its essence, a tangible energy that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I could sense its awareness, its curiosity, and its malevolence. It was as if the forest itself was testing me, probing my mind and soul to see if I was worthy of its secrets. And in that moment, I knew that I had stumbled upon something far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. This was no ordinary forest, it was a place of power, a nexus of supernatural energy that defied explanation. The realization hit me like a physical blow, and I felt a surge of fear that threatened to overwhelm me. But amidst the terror there was also a strange sense of awe, a recognition of the beauty and majesty of the forces at play, something that was both beautiful and grotesque, alluring and deadly. The hand, with its otherworldly glow, was a manifestation of this duality. It was a symbol of the forest's power, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the unknown. As I stood there, transfixed by its light, I felt a strange connection to the forest, a bond that transcended the boundaries of time and space. It was as if the forest was revealing a part of itself to me, sharing its secrets in a language that only my soul could understand. The hand pulsed again, its light illuminating the clearing with an ethereal glow. The shadows retreated, and for a brief moment the forest was bathed in a soft, otherworldly radiance. It was a sight both mesmerizing and terrifying, a glimpse into a reality that lay just beyond the reach of human comprehension. The light seemed to penetrate the very fabric of the forest, revealing hidden paths and ancient symbols etched into the bark of the trees. It was a moment of clarity, a fleeting vision of the true nature of the forest, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished, leaving me alone in the darkness once more. The forest remained silent, watching, waiting. The sense of presence lingered, a reminder that I had been touched by something beyond the ordinary. As I stood there trying to make sense of what had just happened, I realized that the forest had changed me. I was no longer just a visitor, I was now a part of its story, a witness to its mysteries. And in that moment, I knew that I would never see the world in the same way again.